Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining the channel, and today we're going to do a quick comparison on the F10 BMW M5. Compare it to my E60, which is right behind me here, and we'll talk about whether I believe the F10 was a move in the right direction, the way they set it up, the way they designed it, and the way it drives. We'll talk about the F10. Is it a better car, or is the E60 a better car? Let's get rolling. So let's talk about some of the specifications and compare the two. First of all, what are these two cars like and how do they differ on paper? Well, let's start with the basics. The drivetrain. The 5-liter V10 is the engine that catapulted the E60 M5 with 5-liter V10 producing 507 brake horsepower and 383 foot-pounds of torque. While it was a very powerful car, it suffered from a very long linear power band, which unless you had the revs over 6,000 RPM, really felt very luggy at the bottom end. While the F10 has progressed and now produces 560 horsepower, and where the real difference comes in is the 120 pound-feet of torque increase over the E60 up to 500 foot-pounds of torque in the brand new F10 BMW M5. So let's first compare these two cars on paper. First one happens to be, mine is a 2006 BMW E60 M5 that is equipped with a 5-liter V10. The F10, on the other hand, this one is a 2012 F10 M5 equipped with a twin turbo 4.4 liter V8 engine that has two turbos mounted and nestled very neatly down in the V of the engine. This is all for the assistance of creating more efficiency, less turbo lag, and certainly helps with power because the bores of the turbos are slightly larger as well and don't have as much pressure drop. That results in exceptional performance, reduced turbo lag, and all in all, a better driving experience. Now we compare the two gearboxes. So after driving the F10, I can honestly tell you the E60 M5, that is what it needed. It came equipped with the SMG 7-speed gearbox as standard, but in the US markets, you could get actually a 6-speed manual gearbox with a third pedal option, of course. The F10 comes equipped with a 7-speed DCT gearbox that was plumped up to make strong enough to support the torque band of the new engine. Now, since we're talking about torque and horsepower, let's compare the two. The E60 M5, again, has 500 horse, 383 foot-pounds of torque. This is where the F10 trumps the E60. It produces 562 horsepower, so it's up about 55 to 60 horsepower over its predecessor. But more importantly, where you really feel the benefit is in the torque band, which is very, very fat on the F10, and it comes on very low RPM and pulls strong right to the top. Now that torque is an increase of about 120 foot-pounds of torque over the E60, and that is a very usable torque band. So it's not hard to see why the F10 is superior in straight line acceleration. It has a combination of more torque, so it gives more power off the line, and it has a lot quicker shift speeds with the new dual clutch transmission, which also helps this car to accelerate even faster than the E60 M5. So all in all, acceleration is superior in the F10. The efficiency is superior in the F10, as well as the fuel economy is slightly improved on the F10 as well. Now, some other things that are also improved on. The obvious changes are interior changes. Of course, the newer car is slightly, there's an upgrade. There's a slight feel of improvement and more of a plush feel in the newer car. That being said, the E60 is not outdated, and it's certainly not dated, and I still love its sort of Spartan but high quality feel that you get throughout. There's nothing wrong with the E60 or interior. It's just that the F10 has been dialed up a little bit. And of course, with that, you have more controls too. So in the typical progression fashion that BMW proceeds with, a lot of the technology is improved as well. Now you look in some of the console, you have USB plugins, you have all your auxiliary plugins in the F10, whereas I don't have it in the E60 M5. Now that being said, the later models of the E60 could very well have some of those features, but the F10 of course comes standard with all those elements. I mean, there's several driving modes, of course. We know that, we've seen that, and I've demonstrated that in previous videos. But a lot of it is more packaged together. There's lots of driving modes, but the F10 has a lot more independent control. You can adjust directly the damper settings, you can adjust the urgency of the throttle response, you can adjust a lot of the functions, steering speed and the steering dial-in feel you can change as well with the F10. That gives you much more of a customizable feel with the F10. Whereas the E60 is more of, you get the standard drive logic modes, which you dial them in, and you can certainly set them to a position that you're comfortable with. It's just the F10 is a little bit more customizable. Then we move to the exterior of the car. In my mind, there's a few touches that make this car feel a little bit more upscale. You look at the things like the door handles on the F10. They've got extra accents on there. You look at some of the extra accents and some of the extra features and elements of the bumpers. You look at the rear bumper, you look at the front bumpers, they certainly have a feel of upscale to them. Whereas the E60 was a simpler, more rounded off look to it. The F10 has a little bit more chiseled elements created. The front spoiler is certainly a lot more aggressive looking. The rear spoiler is certainly more aggressive looking. The quad exhaust is very similar, of course. The tail end is a little bit more updated on the F10, but that being said, I still believe the E60 M5 has a stronger overall stance, and in my mind, it has a better curbside appeal to me overall, particularly from the side angle and the front quarter. The E60 wins for me. The F10 has some nice elements on the exterior, but the E60 overall has a look that is very clean, simple, but very aggressive nonetheless. Then we move on to quality. They both are obviously, BMW creates a very high quality product. I wouldn't expect any less in the F10 from the E60, and that transition was relatively seamless. I had no sense of any kind of issues on quality control on the F10, neither with my E60. The E60 that I own is holding up very well, but the F10 as well. The car I drove had 67,000 kilometers on it, and at that miles, it was showing very little wear in any places. One of the seat bolsters was slightly worn. There was some scuffage happening there, but that can happen anywhere. You have one bad entrance with a rigid pair of jeans, and that's all it takes to scuff a nice set of seats. But that being said, nothing else was out of sorts. Nothing felt like it was coming apart at the seams, and the F10 quality is every bit as good as the E60. So then we talk about the driving experience. What was the overall driving experience like? Well, let me summarize this, guys, for you. This is really what's important to me. So the first thing that became very evident to me is the gearbox. Being that the F10 has a dual clutch transmission, 7-speed gearbox, it was infinitely better to shift than the SMG transmission. And in my mind, the SMG could have been replaced by a dual clutch had BMW decided to, further enhance the E60 engine and the whole concept of the E60, but they failed to do that. They could have easily made that car very, very crisp, but that's where, to me, the F10 is very, very much more drivable. It engages much quicker. It's a nicer car to get off the stop. It certainly shifts far, far faster. And of course, overall functionality and usability in day-to-day stop-and-go traffic is much nicer to use than the SMG transmission. That being said, this is not a shot at the SMG. The SMG has its moments when it's in its elements. Stop-and-go traffic is not that moment. Where it is in its elements is hard driving on the open road. It has more of a sensation of that hammer in the seat of your pants. It has that drive that is going to make you feel that hammer in the back because there's a slight lag between shifts. It's going to feel more of that sensation, more of driving a manual gearbox, that traditional manual gearbox feel when you're slamming through the gears. The SMG certainly gives you that feel, whereas the F10 is just a constant rush and an almost seamless surge of power. Now that's an exceptional feeling, of course, that you get in the F10, but I can't help but think that some of that would tend to grow old. The SMG, while sluggish at the stoplights and stop-and-go traffic, I believe gives a little bit more of the experience when out on the open road. Or the increased lag between shifts kind of actually adds to the overall driving experience. Now we talk about the overall power band. The F10 has a strong rush, and a big part of that is the turbochargers and the flat torque curve. The E60 doesn't even come into its own till about 5,000 RPM, at which point then it becomes a rush. Once you're revving it up and it's on the boil, I would say these cars are very comparable. Obviously the F10 is up on torque substantially, it's certainly up on horsepower, but overall I would say that the E60 is not a slouch once on the boil. So how do I summarize these two cars? Really, in essence, the F10 for its technological advancements and high performance, the E60 for its overall passion and feel because of the delayed SMG as well as the exotic sound that comes out of that V10 motor. What do I prefer? Well, let's start by saying what's the better value? Well, there's no question the E60 is far superior in terms of value, bang for your buck, and overall appeal that way. It has more of a sense of exotic appeal. I walk away from the drive in this F10 with a slight sense of hollowness. It is spectacularly fast, it does a lot of things really well, and it puts a smile on your face. But I still believe the E60 has more of that emotion drawing power to it. After getting out of the F10 and driving that car for a while, I couldn't help but think it's very fast, but it's like a lot of other cars out there, and it lacks a little bit of soul in my mind. The E60 is full of soul. It's full of problems. It certainly has its issues. Of course, according to all the forums, you can find out all about that, or on my channel you'll find out more on that topic. So the E60 certainly is lacking slightly in reliability, but in that sense of special occasion, the sound, the feel, the E60 still has that in the bag. Sure, it's not as fast as the F10. It's not as good as the F10 in a lot of ways, but it sounds better. It feels more aggressive in a lot of ways. And overall, I would say the E60, for me, is the car that draws more passion. The F10 is a better car. It's faster, it's more reliable, it's quieter, it's not going to wake up the neighbors. It's just an easier car to live with all day long. But the E60, for that Sunday afternoon drive, is the car that you want to have. So everybody, I'm not sure what you like. The E60? Or do you like the F10?
The gearbox is nice.
Do you like the external styling of the E60? Or do you like the styling of the F10? Do you like the interior on the E60 or the interior on the F10? What's your take on this? That's my personal review, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Glad you stuck around to hear the end and my whole take on this car thing, because with the E60 I compare it to a lot of things, and it always comes down to what is it like compared to the F10? What is it like to the E39? And soon we're going to find out what it's like to the F90. We should be doing a short review as well, the E60 versus an F90. I plan on making a video in upcoming days on that car as well. But I hope you enjoyed the quick review on the F10, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We'll be talking to you real soon, everybody. Bye-bye.